Michael, welcome to the Take Flight podcast.
Nice one. Thank you, mate. Thanks for having me.
Mate, thanks so much for coming up to London.
Yeah, no worries, mate. No worries.
Yeah, beautiful day.
Privilege. Yeah, beautiful. Look at this, eh? What a location, eh? Great.
It's nice. The sun's come out for us.
Yeah,
We've got all the boys here with us. We've got Sean, who's on the sound, and Jeremy on the video, which is a pleasure. So, thanks so much, mate. I'm excited.
No worries, buddy. No worries, man.
So, worth saying how this came about, I think.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
I
think the world works in mysterious ways. So it was interesting that it was probably about 2 or 3 weeks before. So basically, you reached out to me on Instagram. Mm-hmm. But about 3 weeks before, I'd done a podcast episode with Ben Bidwell.
Mm-hmm. Naked Professor.
The Naked Professor.
Check him out.
Yeah.
Great guy.
He is a great guy. And we went for lunch straight after. And the first person he recommended of someone I should get in touch with was you.
Yeah.
So I just think it's mad how that works. So like, it was funny when you messaged me. I was like, that was literally, I was planning on messaging you. And good friend of mine, Esme Gummer, as well, had spoke to me.
Esme London on Instagram. Check her out. Absolute legend.
Another legend.
Yeah, love her, man. She's great.
Yeah, she's great. And she'd spoke to me about you as well. So it's really interesting, mate. As soon as you reached out, I was like, I can't wait.
Let's do it, yeah. Let's get it done.
Really pleased to have you here, man.
Yeah, great, man. Great. Yeah, thank you.
No, of course. So always a good place to start. Who are you today? What kind of things you're doing? Like, if you give us an example of this week, for example, what have you been doing?
Yeah, sure. So basically, at the moment, I'm just doing loads of stuff for my book launch. I've got a book coming out 11th of July called Young Offender. It's about my life. I had a real crazy life. You know a bit about it. For anyone who doesn't know about it, come from a very difficult background, went to prison at a young age, was an alcoholic addict, and then turned it all around age 25. And spent a lot of time going back into prisons, helping other young kids turn their life around. Got an award for it from the Metropolitan Police and the London Borough Hounslow. And then went back to acting, signed a book deal with Pan Macmillan, and here we are. The book's being released in about 3 weeks' time. So
congrats, man. That's amazing.
Yeah, man. So this week has just been busy, just working on stuff, basically, ahead of the book launch. So, yeah, man.
Yeah. Mate, that video you did last night, it was last night, wasn't it?
It was, I think it was a couple of days ago. Yeah, I'd done
that. Killed me off, mate.
Mate, I know,
I had a long, tiring day, and watching that just, killed me. It's amazing, man. So, bit of context, you basically got your first book delivered to you and opening it, off the cuff, live on video. Yeah, man. Well, that was it. I remember I got it through in the post. I got 2 copies through in the post from Pan Macmillan. And I was straight away I was going to rip it open and be and my wife was like, well, you get so much support from so many lovely people on social media. Why don't you share this moment with them? Yeah. And it was funny when she said that, it went from excitement to oh my God, I feel really emotional now, thinking I've got to share this with the world. But then it felt right as well. It felt like actually this is a good moment to share with people, and it's a good moment to demonstrate. We talk a lot about vulnerability and men being allowed to not be okay. That this is an opportunity for me to show, this is a big deal for me, and I feel emotional about it. And, men crying is okay. You know what I mean? It's okay to expose yourself and be vulnerable and let the world see that. And, it's all right. Yeah. Which for me, growing up in my world, it was not all right. You couldn't be vulnerable. You couldn't cry, especially in prison. You cry and get vulnerable, you automatically, put yourself out as a target, as a victim, as someone who can be messed with. So for me, exposing that and crying is, I always feel better after a good cry, mate. I tell you, I'm such a crier now. I love it, mate. I watch a bloody film. I watched The Star Is Born. I was sobbing like a little baby. Oh, too right. I was that's a serious film, though, isn't it?
Oh, mate. Yeah.
I think that's why, though. So similar. We've been talking already off air about kind of the stuff we've been doing. A bit of self-reflection and trying to understand ourselves more. You're further down the road than I am with it. But once you do that and you start to learn about your emotions, how you feel about things, it is stuff like that triggers you if you see vulnerability in other people. Especially, I think, if the classic example is when you're hungover, isn't it? You've obviously got a lot of negative toxins in you, bad stuff in you, and your body wants to get rid of it. So then if you do watch something that's emotional, naturally your body wants to get rid of it. Crying's a really good way to do that. Obviously, I'd have a long, tiring day the other day, saw your video. Right, and that just triggered me straight away.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the alcohol is a natural depressant, so that's a chemical reaction. So the same way when you take an antidepressant, that releases chemicals in your brain to make you feel happier. Alcohol does the opposite. So alcohol will make you depressed. So that's no coincidence that when you got a hangover in the morning, you're more emotional. Yeah. You're more able to cry because, So yeah, I just thought I'd share that.
No, I love that, mate. What do you think about? So I've spoke about this a couple of times on the podcast about consciousness and enlightenment, awakening, this sort of stuff. But how things like meditation and the stuff we were talking about that you do on your retreats and stuff, which I want to talk to you about more later.
Yeah, sure.
Allow you to get to higher levels of consciousness, learn about yourself, go through periods of self development, and just get better, generally speaking. But alcohol does the opposite. It allows you to have that escapism, but it does it in a bad way.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
Yeah, so like when things get hard, if you check out via alcohol, drugs, whatever your thing is, if you check out, mentally you check out. You don't want to look at that difficult thing that is coming up, which a lot of people do, then you just don't grow. You know, you can't grow emotionally as a human being. And for me, you know, having a lot of trauma and a lot of stuff that I didn't want to look at, alcohol and drugs are very useful in checking out. You're able to forget, you're able to block it out, you're able to numb it out. But also when you do that, the sacrifice you do is that you don't grow as a human being, so you don't learn. And so for me, when these difficult things come up, don't check out. Like, look at them. Like, why are you feeling this? Because normally your emotions are trying to point you in a direction of something that you need to look at that's stopping you getting to somewhere where you want to go or where you believe you should be. So don't check out, you know. And I think, like, if I've got to be careful what I say here, but for me, there's a lot of people out there who are like coaches who spend the weekend in nightclubs and bars, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if when things get hard for you, you're checking out, how can you coach someone? You know, how can you coach someone? You know, to walk through that ring of fire themselves, because that's what it is. You know, on a Friday when you've had a hard week at work and this has happened, or you broke up with your girlfriend and your head's telling you, I'm going to go down the pub and I'm going to get with another girl. Actually, what you need to do is sit and evaluate what went wrong in that relationship. So I'm not going to carry that stuff into my next relationship. And, you know, it's the same thing with anything. You know, like if you lose your job and you want to go to the pub to drown your sorrows, you know, really you want to be looking at why did you lose your job? So I don't go and repeat the same mistakes in my life. You see what I mean? Yeah. So the whole culture, like, around alcohol needs to change. You know, we've been sold this dream that, you know, happiness lies in the pubs and the bars and the nightclubs, you know, TV shows, I won't name them just for legal reasons, but they promote this lifestyle in nightclubs and bars, and that's where happiness is, and that is not where happiness is.
I was speaking to a friend about this the other day that she's Irish, and her brother suffers with, well, serious chronic depression and has attempted suicide a number of times. And we were talking about it, how like Ireland and England, very alcohol driven cultures, where we go out at a weekend, you know, it's a sunny day today, I imagine at 3 o'clock this afternoon there's going to be tons of people like lining the streets of the pubs. It's just not good, mate. But I think, like, what I'd like to do with this episode, if it's all right with you, is for the first part dive into your story, because it's unbelievable, and I want to hear all the details about that. And then, as we already have heard some already, hear in the second half of the episode more about your advice and the stuff you've learned through what you've been through.
Yeah, sure, mate. Yeah. I'm easy to go whatever way you want, mate.
Okay, amazing. So if we start off with where it all started, where it all began, what was it that happened when you grew up? What did you go through, and what made you turn to some of the substances and stuff? Yeah,
sure. So my mum came from a Romany gypsy background. So my mum was one of, I think, about 15 brothers and sisters. She was born in a caravan in Ireland at the side of a road. And then when she was 16, there was a pre-arranged marriage to another gypsy family, which was quite a common thing in the traveller community back then, to end feuds, like your son will marry my daughter, and it would end the feud between a rival family. My mum didn't want to marry this guy, and so she fled to London. She came here, and you know, back then it was tough. There were still signs on doors of hotels saying no blacks, no dogs, no Irish. You know what I mean? So like, I really rate her for that. You know, she came here with no money and made a living. But in the middle of that, she met my dad, who was like her knight in shining armour, but would also come from a difficult background himself. And so they had a real passionate, loving relationship, but ultimately they'd both come from very turbulent backgrounds themselves. It was never going to work. They didn't have any template to work from. And so the relationship ended quite quickly. My dad left before I was age 1. He went on to, I've got 13 half brothers and sisters from my dad. And I lived with my mum primarily all my life.
Not with your brothers or sisters?
Not with the brothers and sisters from my dad. So my dad I've got 13 step brothers and sisters from my dad, who I only met when we got older.
What do your dad do career-wise?
My dad can't read or write. My dad, is a heroin addict. He's been a drug addict all his life.
Still now?
Yeah, still now, yeah. Yeah, he's in and out of prison all his life,
Really?
so...
You still in contact with him?
I am, mate, yeah. I mean, I went through a big phase of work when I was about 7 years sober because I found it really difficult having him in my life. And I got to this point where I'd done this big key piece of work on myself where if he was to die today, how would I feel? And when I comprehended that, I was like... shit, there's a lot of stuff actually I'd fucking like to know about him and ask him and hear from him and tell him. And it was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a relationship with him where I have no investment in him getting sober and I set the stage for him to be completely honest. And I don't give him any money. So I said, I got back in contact with him. I said, look, I want a relationship with you because I believe we only live once and I hate for you to die and us to not have a proper relationship. Yeah. But I'm not going to lend you money. I'm not going to pay your debts. I will buy you food if you need it. I've got no investment in you getting sober or clean. It doesn't bother me. So don't lie to me. Just be honest with me and we can have a relationship. And from that point on, we've had a great relationship. And, he's still a drug addict, but he knows you don't ask me for money. Yeah. I'll buy him some tobacco and some food. And, it's great. I mean, the one thing that I've taken from that is he tells me all the time how much he loves me and how proud he is of me, and that is the gold I've took from that. In having complete acceptance, not trying to change him, not trying to get him sober, just being like, you're a drug addict and I love you anyway.
Well, what a good message for any kind of relationship, though, because I think we all just want to know where we stand with people, don't we? And you've done that straight away. Yeah. I don't know, we're going to talk about this, don't let me forget about the Native American stuff. But yeah, sure. I think that's what you were alluding to earlier with the king part of you. Right? Yeah,
right, yeah.
So we can talk about that later on.
Yeah, sure, man.
Mate, that's amazing. Cheers for sharing that. That's quite intense, mate.
Yeah.
Chat to you about that all day, I reckon. So, your mum and dad met. They had you. Yeah. Your dad left when you were 1.
Before I was 1, and then he came back. My mum got pregnant with my sister, and then it was still turbulent, and so he left. And then, in the middle of that, my mum's brother came to live with us. He got taken into care when he was very young. He was raised by the priests and the nuns of Nazareth in Ireland, which back then, I mean, it's all documented now that it was sexual abuse, physical abuse, everything. He was taken in as a child. So all he'd ever known was physical and sexual abuse from a child. And he lived with us. And so he passed some of that physical and sexual abuse on to me as a kid. I was 3, 4 years old.
And how old was your brother?
My brother?
Yeah. Who did you say had...
No, that was my uncle.
Oh, your uncle?
My uncle, yeah. My mum's brother.
Right.
So my mum's brother grew up in care.
And your uncle lived with you?
And my uncle came out of the children's home and then he come and lived with us.
Yeah.
And so that's how sort of, it got passed on to me, the physical abuse, intimidation, sexual abuse, all that sort of stuff.
From what age was that?
Between like 3 and 4, it was, sort of, and it was for a long time, it was just vague memories until I really sat with a therapist and unplugged it all and picked all the piece, picked it all out. And I was like, yeah, that's not right, and then I had a moment with a therapist in a room where I couldn't stop physically shaking, and it was like I was reliving some trauma I'd experienced as a kid. And we looked at it more, and it was you tallied up some of the stories of abuse that happened in the home he grew up in to the stuff that happened to me, and he also went on to abuse other kids, and I had contact with them and heard their stories, and they were all very similar. And it was just really sad, sad for the boy that I was, my innocence. I was so young when that happened, and sad for for him as well, because I can see his innocence. He was a little boy. He didn't come out of his mother's womb as a bad person. He got priests and nuns, battered and abused him, and he grew up thinking this is what happened. This is normal, and he passed it on to me. So,
I'm just interested, talking about the therapy there. We spoke about that on the podcast before.
Yeah,
what was it that allowed you to get to that place where you almost relived the experience? Or what was it? Because you talk about good therapists, bad therapists, or ways that you can really deal with that. That was obviously something that was really powerful and profound for you. Was it a question that she asked, or was it just the right time in your life, do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting that you guessed it was a she. Very good. I'd always had male therapists, really? Right? Yeah, always had male therapists, right? No one ever got to the sexual abuse, right? And I sort of suspected something had happened, but I didn't know. Yeah, and none of the male therapists could get it out of me.
So you couldn't remember it in your life up to this point?
No, I could remember certain things being with my uncle and thinking that memory doesn't seem right. Him getting into my bed, right, at night. And I had this little cubby hole where I would hide away. And I didn't know why I created this cubby hole under my bed to hide. Yeah, but I remember him being in there with me, getting in there with me. And I remember him screaming in my face once. And it was like them little things that were just like little fleeting memories. That's all they were. And then I sat with this stuff and I was like, I need to mix this up a bit. And so I went for the most qualified, like female. I'm going to choose a female and she's going to have all the qualifications under the sun. So she was like psychologist, psychotherapist, hypnotherapist. She had all these qualifications. And so I went to her and was just like, bleh, here's this big old mess. Can you help me do it? And she, like, within like 2 or 3 sessions, picked it out. And,
no way.
And yeah, and I had that moment where I felt really embarrassed. I felt shame because I was shaking, like physically shaking, my legs and everything. And I was trying to stop it. I was like, this is fucking insane.
Yeah.
And she was like, yeah, this is maybe when you was a 3-year-old, you were physically shaking and I've took you back there. And it was like, yeah, looking at that more and unpacking it and then looking at his part and then looking at his life and, you know, eventually getting to a point where I wasn't angry with him and I could I could see his innocence. You know what I mean? That he was just a kid and that's all he'd known all his life. But for me back then, what happened was I made a decision sort of age 4 or 5. My dad had left, my mum was an alcoholic, and I had this basically a predator living in the house who was, you know, physical and sexually abusive. And my decision was, this world isn't a friendly place. And from that place, okay, how am I going to survive? As you are, it's going to be hard to survive. So you need to create a version of yourself, like an adapted version of yourself that can survive in this world. And so that's when I started detaching from the scared, vulnerable little boy and started creating a kid who was very naughty, quite dismissive. You couldn't really get through to me. I would often be talking, teachers would be talking to me and I'd just drift off. I'd be staring out the window, which was me disassociating. I'd get a memory in my mind and the only way to process that as a kid was to disassociate. So teachers labelled me as he's a bit stupid. He drifts off occasionally. Yeah. I wasn't stupid, you know. I mean, I've proved it. Look, everything I've achieved in my life, but I was disassociating from the trauma that I was experiencing at home, you know. So, and I grew up, you know, this kid who could go from 1 to 10 in terms of anger very quickly. Someone could call me a name in the playground and I would just go 1 to 10, bang. And you know, I didn't ever talk to anyone about it. I didn't talk to my mum about it, you know, because my uncle was very clever in the way he, you know, made me believe I'd be in trouble. No one would believe me. And he had like these friends in Ireland who he always said he was part of the IRA. I found out it was a load of bullshit. It was something he just said to people to scare them, that they would come and take me away. And, you know, so I kept it a secret, you know, and I carried the shame myself. I basically made it mean I'm not a good person. You're a bad person.
You're not enough.
Yeah, you're not enough. And somehow you invited this. Yeah, so like you deserved it.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with you. Look, your own fucking father left, so you probably deserved this abuse.
Yeah.
So you pile all this onto a young kid, which is too much to process, and that's why when you have a lesson in the school, at school, you know, you're in with the teachers in class. Yeah. So you're in class. And the teacher would be like, Michael, hello, Michael. Because I'd be disassociating. Because I'm thinking about all this stuff in my head, which I can't process because I'm just too young. And the teachers were like, you know, Michael's got great potential, but he just drifts off. You can't get through to him. He's in another bloody world. Yeah. You know, and they could have labelled that anything these days, you know, you got some mental thing. But really, I was disassociating.
I mean, do you think you were living for large parts of your childhood from a place of fear?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Everything was responding from fear. So if someone tried to give me some sort of negative feedback or, you know, constructive criticism, I was worried you were going to hurt me. So I would present to you a version that would, like an angry version that would push you back.
Yeah.
But also, if you came to me with love, I would give you the same as well. Because my Uncle Tommy approached me with love to get what he wanted out of me. So he made me trust him. You know what I mean? And so when other people were trying to gain my trust, I met them with resistance because I was like, I'm not fucking letting you in.
Yeah.
I know the people closest to me hurt me. So what are you going to do to me?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like the people in my own home hurt me, and you're like a teacher.
Yeah.
So you're probably going to do even worse. So I ain't letting you close to me.
What's your, like, I don't want to jump too far forward, but what's your relationship like with love now? I know you've got a family, you've got kids. So that must have been a completely different experience with love.
Mate, I tell you, that was a massive learning for me, is A, learning intimacy with another human being, and B, being a good parent. You know, like my mum was an alcoholic, my dad was a drug addict who left before I was 1. So how do you be a good parent? I don't know what the fuck that looks like, really. I had to go and see a special therapist who dealt with parenting and be like, help me, because I don't know what to do. And I don't want to repeat the same cycles.
Yeah, but again, mate, what a great message, because a lot of people would be just trapped in that fear and not act on it and do anything. Like, at least you've gone and sought help and recognised that possibly weakness in you.
Yeah, I agree, mate. And that's what the therapist said to me as well. You know, he was like, really praised me for it, that I was sitting in front of him asking these questions every week. Like, okay, this happened. How do I deal with it? Because in all honesty, everything was resolved with a slap in my house. My mum and dad would argue, slap. I was naughty, slap, you know. And so when my first daughter come along and she was age 2 and she was like playing up, my head was going, okay, I know how to resolve this. You slap them. And it was like, shit, I've never hit my kids, but I had to go and see a therapist and say, my 2-year-old is playing up, which is completely normal, but the only solution my head has is to slap them. How do I, like, what do you do? I don't know what to do.
What did they say?
And they were like, you know, treat it, so you imagine your 2-year-old's having a tantrum and it's like a fire. Yeah, so you imagine it's a fire and you want to put that fire out. So you're a fire blanket and you're going to put the fire out with love. Yeah, so you're going to just get down to their eye level, look them in the eyes, and remember, until the children are 6 years old, they don't have the emotional mechanisms inside to process what's going on for them. So all you have to do is just sit with them through this process long enough and just give them love and let them know you hear them and you're here for them. And it was amazing. The first time I'd done it, you know, and she was like, I'm not brushing my teeth. And I was like, come down. I was like, and I was really dubious. I didn't think it would work. and yeah, I come down to her eye level. I said, I really hear you. What's going on for you? Oh, I'm just really tired, Dad. And started crying. And I was like, oh my God. And I just thought, and I was like, and it was this lovely moment of like, where I felt so connected to her, but then also I felt a bit of sadness of like, that's really what I fucking needed, man, when I was a kid. Mate, do you know what I'm saying? When instead it would have just been brush your fucking teeth and slap
you had it.
Yeah, of course. So there was that, but then the massive work around, you know, intimacy. Like, you know, what is intimacy? Like, what is it? I didn't know what it was. I thought intimacy was sex. I thought, that's it, innit? Sex. And if, you know, you're not having sex, clearly you don't love me. So I thought intimacy was sex. I thought sex was love. So if I'm in a relationship and we're out of the honeymoon period and we're not having sex all the time, that means you don't love me anymore. Yeah. Right? It was so messed up, right? So crazy,
like
right?
Purely physical.
It was just mental, yeah. You know, but it makes sense because no one showed me that growing up, you see? And so the blueprint handed down to me from my father, when things get hard, around the 1 year point, when you've been together 1 year to 2 years, you bail, go and find a new girl. And that sort of was playing out in my life, you know. Whenever a woman was getting close to me, close, a little bit closer, my fucking walls would come up. Because my fear is you're going to get close to me, you're going to see how messed up I am, and you're probably going to run a mile and reject me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put walls here and stop you from getting close. Yeah. Or I'm just going to reject you first. So at least I've got some control over it. And yeah, it took me a lot of time to untangle that in my mind, what I was doing, you know. I just had it all mixed up, intimacy all mixed up.
Mate, thanks again for sharing, man. I think like some of the stuff I've gone through with my own therapy is trying to understand a little bit more about love. Like, even though I had the most loving parents and they were amazing, if you don't love yourself, you can't really feel that. Trying to understand, like, why don't you love yourself? Why do you have trouble being like proud of yourself or whatever it is? Because then if you're in relationships, then again, you can't give it if you can't feel it. So like being in relationships with people, like trying to understand how to love yourself in order to be able to serve and love other people. That's kind of been where I've been the last few years, I'd say.
Yeah, I hear you, man. And that's like the gold. The gold is like, what am I doing every day to make me a better version of me? So then the version of me that shows up in the lives of the people I love is the best version. So they're not getting like the version who's knackered on a Friday, who's stressed out. They're getting the version of me who can show up, who can be supportive to them, who can really hear them, not just sit there nodding your head like you're listening, but like really hear what they're saying and respond with like a good bit of feedback for them.
Being really present.
Yeah. So like it starts with, loving yourself, and then you're able to really love someone. And love isn't this bloody fairy tale in Disney films. Love is like consideration. Like really consider, how is my wife going to feel, how's my partner going to feel if I take this action? That's what it is. Yeah, life is really actions, okay? And considering how that person, how that human being will feel when I take this action. That's really what it is for me, consideration and support. So I support you and your dreams, even if I think it's a waste of time and a waste of money. I still support you because I love you, and like that's it. Support, and consideration. That's what love is for me,
That's amazing, mate. I think when I've been consciously trying to think more about it, especially in those situations where my wife might be in a period of stress or anxiety herself, and I'm really looking at them, or happiness actually, if they're in a place of happiness as well, just really like looking at them and thinking about what they're experiencing. Because I've always been, quite openly selfish probably for a lot of my childhood.
Yeah, right. So have I agree that.
Yeah. So looking at that, and then you see really amazing sides of them by just being able to look at it from a different viewpoint.
Yeah, right. I agree, mate, 100%. I think the more we can sit down and really connect with our partners, the better. I mean, like we have an exercise at home that we do where we turn our phones off, turn the TV off, we sit face to face, maintain eye contact, and we set a timer on our phone for 10 minutes. And the timer goes, and for 10 minutes, my wife talks. And we maintain eye contact, and I don't respond. I just hear her. I just listen.
How often do you do this?
Right? We do it, we used to, there was a period where we done it every day for a long period of time, right? Which was amazing. Like, you just, you remember why you fell in love with this person. You're like, oh my God, I can see the person I fell in love with, And now, we don't do it as much, probably once or twice a week, you know. And
what triggered you to do that, though? Was it something... Were you going through a difficult time, or was it just...
Yeah. So, like, I went through a really difficult time where we were together and I wanted to leave the relationship, and, like, I can leave the relationship but also stay in the relationship. Like, I can stay in relationship with you, but I can not really be there too. Do you know what I mean? I'm not really there. I'm not really into it. Or I'm cheating. I could be with other women, or, you can leave a relationship but stay in it.
Yeah.
And that's what was going on for me. And, we went away. I'd done loads of work on it, and my wife done some work, and we met back up. And one of the processes we got, which was from, actually, if anyone's listening to this, check out Dwayne and Catherine O'Kane. They own a company called Clearmind. These guys were instrumental in sort of repairing our relationship. And that was one of the processes that we learned was, checking in. And, when that time is finished and she's finished talking, you just nod your head. Thank you for sharing. Set the timer again, and then I talk. But you're not allowed to cross-share. So if she says, when you didn't do the washing up, you really pissed me off, you're not allowed to wait for your turn and then go, listen, about the bloody washing up, right? Okay, that's not how it works. You just have to hear them and always talk from yourself and always use I statements, Okay. An I statement isn't, I think you're stupid. An I statement is, when this happened, I felt like this.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how, you get sort of 5 minutes in and you think, I'm done, I got nothing else to say. And then you get to like 8 minutes and you're like, oh my God, this happened and that happened and that happened. And, after like a week of doing it, you're like, you realise how much goes on in my life that she doesn't even know about.
Yeah.
Like little things that maybe someone at work said me this little comment that she doesn't even know, that then I tell her and she's like, oh, that makes sense. Because when you come home that day, you were a bit off. I made it mean that I'd done something wrong or you were pissed off with me. So like all this communication goes on non-verbally. We're making stuff mean stuff that it's not. And you can just, you know, squash it by communicating.
Mate, that's so fascinating. I think something that's amazing. You triggered something for me there. Like, you know, we're obviously very busy people doing lots of stuff. There's lots of distractions in this world, social media, a lot of tech stuff going on. A lot of the time, people like us are on either laptops, phones, whatever, you know, even just looking around this room that we're in, this studio, it's all like tech everywhere. So I've got all these things coming in, all these distractions coming in. Conversations is another one. A lot of the time I'll go home and I'll be talking about something and I'll be like, fucking hell, I wasn't even actually speaking to you about that, was I? I was speaking to somebody else. Or like you're saying, those things that you miss that you haven't communicated about, sometimes you just assume that you told that person or that they know, and then you can be coming from a place of like, oh, well, you know what I'm talking about here, so just how do you not understand what I'm saying now? But I suppose that's a perfect way to get on a level again.
It is, mate. And, you know, people say, oh, you know, we just grew apart. No, you didn't just grow apart. You stopped talking. Yeah? Lots of stuff happened in your life that you didn't tell them about, and now you're saying, yeah, we just grew apart. No, you stopped letting that person into your world. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I guess, like, some relationships change, and I don't suggest, like, you know, staying in abusive or negative relationships, but I think try doing some stuff first before you walk out the door. You know, try that exercise, for instance, and watch how you feel after a week of doing it. You think it's 10 minutes each, 20 minutes a day. Surely your relationship's worth that for 5-7 days, right?
Yeah, amazing.
And for me, it was like incredible, you know. And I saw this woman in front of me who, like, I fell in love with. It was like, oh my God, I remember this. I remember you now. I don't know if you remember that scene from Hook. You've seen Captain Hook, and you know when he goes back and he's a grown man, and the kids are pulling him, going, is that really Peter? And then they're like, there you are, Peter. You remember that scene? That's what it was like with my wife. I was like, oh my God, there you are. There's that woman I met who I fell in love with. It's like, how did I fucking forget this?
It's a sad scene. It's a sad scene, that, because it made me think a lot about change.
Yeah, right. Good
and bad change. But yeah. Mate, we'll get back onto your story in a minute because we've just gone in there and I love it. So we'll get back to your story. But you spoke about how you try and do something every day to make you grow. What sort of things outside of that? That's an amazing example. What else do you do that helps you grow and develop daily?
So, you know, like for me, I have to do things every day that contribute towards my happiness. If I don't, then in my opinion, I have no right to think I deserve to be happy. So if I'm unhappy or if I'm depressed, it's a consequence of me not doing things that make me happy. Yeah. And so for me, like, you know, I didn't want to do it when I'm here in London. I'm here in London at my brother's house. I can look at it as a vacation, but I know I have to get up. So I got up this morning. I've done 15 minutes of Wim Hof breathing. I do 10 minutes meditation. I didn't do any exercise today, but I know a bit of meditation and a bit of Wim Hof breathing. I've also sent free gratitude lists off. I get gratitude lists from people as well, you know, which is a huge thing for me.
What's that? What, you get them sent to you?
So like, it's like a process that I do with some friends and some people I mentor and stuff, where we send each other 5 things every day we're grateful for.
Wow.
So it's just a way of looking at, actually, you know, I've got some good stuff in my life.
Well, just on WhatsApp, ping your mates?
Just WhatsApp, yeah, just 5 things. If you want to do it with me.
I will, mate.
Yeah, do it with me. Yeah, I do it every day, man.
Love it.
And it just is like a way of going, actually, yeah, I've got my health, I've got my wife, I've got my business, I've got my sobriety, you know, the sun is shining, I've got food in my belly.
Yeah.
Actually, life's pretty good, man. I'm doing good. And it's amazing. You just list off, you know, sometimes it's 10 things, sometimes it's 5.
Yeah.
But, you know, you just remember the things you have got that a lot of people haven't got. And you're like, actually, life's pretty good, man.
Yeah.
You know?
Amazing. What about the meditation? What type do you do?
So I just literally, mate, I'm not complicated with my meditation. You know, I go onto YouTube, 10-minute meditation, literally, and I just randomly pick a video. And I just sit there, you know, and I sit and, you know, if I get some message or thought that comes to me that I think is useful, I'll play with it a bit. If not, then I just let it go. Almost like clouds passing in the sky. So if the clouds are passing and I like the look of one cloud, I'm like, oh, I like this. Let me think about it.
Yeah. And I like this. It's a new book.
Well, yeah. Like, it could be an idea. Oh, I could do a video on social media about that. Oh. Yeah. And you'll be amazed at great ideas that come to you in meditation when you just sit still with no distractions and just let thoughts come to you. So, yeah, that's what I do.
Amazing. It's become my 100% non-negotiable. Like I have to do it every day now because, like I was saying before, those distractions. It's just, it's something I suffer with a lot with overwhelm. And I was telling you before we started recording about the caffeine break I've had. 7 days allows you to reset your tolerance to caffeine because sometimes that overwhelm is driven to a place of anxiety, and caffeine only encourages that.
Yeah, sure. How did you find that on the first couple of days? I'm curious.
Mate. Well, I've done it. It's my second time of doing it now, so it was easier than the first time doing it, which I think is just a massive message for taking action on things. Each time we do something, it's easier. Each time we're getting better with it, so it feels easier. So it was better than the first time, just like mass headaches, mate. But by day 3-4, I felt more clarity. It actually then spurred me to take 3 days off social media as well.
Nice.
Yeah. So
it had a knock-on effect. It had lots of positives as well.
Yeah, because it's easy to get into that pattern of sitting there with a coffee and get my phone out and just scrolling through stuff for 20 minutes or whatever. When I could be meditating or messaging you my gratitude.
There you go. But yeah, man, I relate to that. I mean, it's funny because like if I have a bit of time off exercise, I tend to want to eat crap food.
Yeah.
But when I'm exercising, I tend to want to eat well.
Yeah,
so it's like you 100%. Do these positive things, they have like a knock-on effect, don't they?
Big time.
You know, so yeah, well done, mate.
Yeah, and you, mate. No, I love those examples. So, right, to get back to your story.
Yeah, sure.
So we got up to when you're in school, you're charged with a lot of anger.
Yeah.
At some stage, you turned to substances.
Yeah. So basically, when I finished primary school, my mum had like 2 heart attacks, right? And at the time, I was like this naughty kid, always like 1 to 10 in terms of anger, right? And my mum had these heart attacks, and my mum sort of said something to me, you know, like, I need you to behave now, Michael, like, you know, because I'm not well. And like, in my mind, what I translated was, if I don't behave, your mum's going to die. Yeah, and if your mum dies, you're left with your stepdad. And I had a really turbulent relationship with him. And it was like, fuck, my mum's the only person I got. And so I went to secondary school as like this kid who I literally was just kept my head down. And what happened in that first year of school, you know, you sort of first year at school, girls, you know, you get these hormones, guys get the hormones as well, right? And I was getting like a lot of attention from females, right? I didn't want the fucking attention, right? And then you had a group of cool kids, and the cool kids wanted that girl's attention, but they weren't getting it. I was getting it. And it started off bullying. And the bullying started, and I just kept my head down, and I'd get tripped up, pushed over, I'd get slapped, I'd get, you know, stuff would happen. And in my head, it was like, I'm not going to retaliate, because if I retaliate and I get in trouble, my mum could die. I don't want my mum to have another heart attack and die. And so the bullying got really, like, out of control. And then on 6 weeks holidays, I started, like, there was a couple of older kids from my neighbourhood where I grew up, and I just randomly started speaking to them one day. And, like, just on the first occasion, I opened up about the bullying. And I think the guy I spoke to, I mean, it says more about this in the book, but the guy I spoke to must have had an experience of it himself. He's never confirmed that to me. But he really was like, what? And he took me under his wing. And so now I'm hanging about with these kids who are like 3-4 years older than me. I think they're about 4 years older than me. And basically smoking weed. I was doing loads of stuff, you know. That 6 weeks holidays was like a cocktail of crack, cocaine, even heroin. I'd done like heroin when I was 12, 13, like just all of it. And what I'd done was in that situation, I looked at these older kids, I looked at how they acted, I looked at how they spoke, how they walked, how they handled conflict, what they said, and I was basically creating a character that could survive in this world, you know, that could survive the bullying, you know, that could survive even if my mum died. Yeah, I was like, I need to create someone that can never hurt me like my Uncle Tommy did, can never intimidate me like my stepdad did, and can take on all these bullies. And it was basically creating like another version of me that was like the meanest version that you could get your hands on. And it was a combination of all the guys in this gang. And that was it. I went back to school year 2 and, second year at secondary school, and was just like a completely different kid, you know. And I remember one of my teachers said to my mum in you know, a parents' evening, like, I don't know what's happened in the 6 weeks holidays, but Michael is a different person now. It's not the same kid who was in year 7. And I remember at that moment feeling really proud. I was like, yeah, that fucking kid's gone. He ain't fucking coming back. You got this guy now, you know. And I call it the security guard. I created a security guard. The scared boy was put in the corner. You sit down there, you scared little bitch. Now the world's got to deal with me. Every person who comes into contact has to fucking deal with this guy now. And so, yeah, and, you know, I went on to just, you know, take on all the bullies and, you know, sort of, I would say there was some bullying myself. I bullied the people who bullied me, you know, just purely angry. I was angry with the fucking world, you know, like, and then...
It gives you a sense of empowerment, though, when you did that, right?
Yeah, I felt power, but, you know, the problem I had with that power is that I'm an addict, right? And I became addicted to the power. So it was never enough. So, yeah, I became the toughest kid in my year. Then I became the toughest kid in my school. And now I wanted to be the toughest kid in my neighbourhood. And I knew I couldn't do that without a weapon. And I watched the film called Menace to Society, and this kid had a gun. Have you ever seen the film Menace to Society?
Yeah. Film.
And this kid had a gun, and I was like, yeah, I need a fucking gun, man. I need to get my hands on a gun. And I remember going to these older kids who were like 4 years older than me.
The same kids who'd
like I'd had an apprenticeship with and being like a real mean motherfucker, right? And they were like, "You're crazy, man. I was like 14 at the time. They were like, "You want a gun?" I was like, "We can't get a gun. We're not in bloody LA. We're in London, mate." I was like, "But I need a gun, mate. I want a gun," you know. And sort of I went through this period of trying to find a gun, and in the end, I got my hands on like an imitation firearm, and that was it. I was going around with my imitation firearm.
So what can an imitation firearm do versus a real gun?
So it was in Clinton cards back in the day, right? You know Clinton cards, right? They used to have these like memorabilia guns that were basically a lighter.
Okay.
So out the end would come a flame for you to light your cigarettes, but it was a replica. It looked exactly like a gun, and it was made out of metal. It was weight and everything of a real gun.
That's funny. So you literally got that just to scare people, basically.
Yeah. Well, I literally saw it in the window, and I was like, man, I can't get a real gun, but that's as close as I can get. And I remember there was a girl I was seeing at the time. She didn't know what my plans were with that gun, and she bought it for me as a present. And for me, it was like, you know, I was just a nightmare. I was waving it about everywhere. People thought it was a real gun, and, you know, you could assault people with it like it was a real gun. It had the weight. And so I just became this crazy kid running around with this gun, assaulting people, holding up shops. And yeah, and then it led to the armed robbery charge, you know, armed robbery and possession of an imitation firearm.
Where did you do that?
Done it in Isleworth, where I grew up. Yeah, done it right on my doorstep.
Really?
Yeah. And then that was it. You know, I got arrested for that, and that changed the game completely.
Was that charged with anger as well? Or was that a different emotion go through your head at that point?
So I had a thing with my mum at the time. You know, there was a party that weekend, and I was like, "Mum, can I have some money to get my hair cut?" And my mum had a habit back then. She'd say stuff, and she'd forget she'd fucking said it because she'd drink and stuff. And it came to the day, and I was like, "Can I have money for a haircut?" She was like, "Oh, yeah, I ain't giving you no money for a haircut. You know, piss off," sort of thing. And I was so full of rage. I was like, I'm gonna go and get some fucking money myself then.
Yeah.
You know, and I went to the local shop and held it up, and it was just a bodged robbery. It went really wrong. And then that was it. You know, got arrested for it, and that was like the game changer, because I was addicted to power before, but then I got the power off the back of that charge, which I didn't know would happen. But you get arrested for armed robbery. I was too young to be named, but everyone knew in the newspapers who it was. You know, back then there weren't 15-year-old armed robbers in London. You know, there probably is now, but back then it was a rare thing, right? And so people knew who this kid was in the newspapers that they was being talked about. And my credibility, street credibility, reputation, whatever you want to call it, went like up. Suddenly I was this kid who you did not want to mess with, yeah? And then, you know, it wasn't good for me because, you know, I'm an addict and I become addicted to that power and I want more and more. You know, now I want to be the toughest kid in the borough. And then, you know, you translate that to when you eventually get sent to prison, which I did. I got sent to prison when I was 16 for attempted murder.
Attempted murder?
Attempted murder, yeah.